everybody, this is Kyle from DataSkeptic.com. I've been meaning to dig more into the Data Skeptic podcast listener download numbers. We keep pretty heads down trying to make content we think is cool and interesting, and it's great when we get feedback from our listeners, but the truest feedback of all is, of course, data-driven feedback. So I've been meaning to dig into my download numbers to try and understand a little bit more about the listenership. I set some time aside today to do that, and I couldn't think of a better tool to use than Periscope Data. So I'm going to demonstrate what Periscope Data can do for you while I explore some questions I have about my podcast. By the way, Periscope Data has generously been sponsoring the show for a little while now. If you're interested in what they've got going on, please head over to periscopedata.com/skeptics so they know we sent you. You can sign up for a free trial, and you get some goodies as well for doing that. So let's get started. Here I have an example dashboard. One of the cool features I'm not going to play with is this map option they have. This is some test data they provide with these cool rollovers. It's all kind of built in, and this happens really seamlessly. What's nice about Periscope Data is you go straight from SQL to charts really quickly and easily. You know, contrary to if I were to do this manually in like a Jupyter notebook where I'd have to write my query, move it into Jupyter, write some matplotlib, and then I still wouldn't even have interactivity. I love Periscope Data for easy data exploration as well as the other more advanced features we'll talk about during this video. So let's get started. The first thing I want to do is create a new dashboard. All right, empty dashboard. Let's call it the Data Skeptic Podcast Downloads Dashboard. All right, now I haven't actually connected my database to this yet, so let's do a quick walkthrough of how easy that is. I'm going to go down to Settings, and then Database. Add a database. Let's call this Data Skeptic. Fast forwarding a little bit, let's just go ahead and add that. Looks like we're good to go. Let's start building with it. So let's make a new chart here. And to start out, I want to get the count of the distinct episodes from my downloads table. Just one number, but I like to keep an eye on how far the show's gotten. Cool, 156 episodes so far. Now I could display it just like this, and that might be fine. But instead of the table view, I'm going to do it as a number overlay. And I'm going to rename this as episodes. So now when I save that and I add it to my dashboard, maybe I'll shrink that down because it doesn't need to be so big. I get just like a nice quick reference. I like starting out my dashboards with high-level stuff like that. Let's do a few more. How about, as much as pie charts are kind of a no-no for data visualization people, they do have their purposes. I'd like to get an understanding of how much the show has grown in the few years we've been doing it. So let's get the percentage of downloads by year. Now I'd like to normalize that over the whole time so I can get just the percentage. And let's run that to check it. This should go back to 2014. Sure enough, there we are. Let's alias that real quick. Good. What does it look like as a pie chart? There we go. A little misleading because I'm recording this on Tuesday, April 11th, so as long as the listeners don't all quit on me starting tomorrow and never come back, this number should continue to grow through 2017, and I hope that it'll exceed 2016, but these are my numbers so far. Cool to see how much the growth has happened in the first 3 years. But let's put some numbers to that, shall we? If we go down to Tooltips and expand that, we've got some great customization options. Let's just put a tooltip under that column I aliased as P. What that gives us is a nice interactive rollover where I can see the exact percentages. Download percentage by year. I guess I don't really need that legend. Let's turn that off. Hide the legend. And I don't think this will matter, but preserve the sort order would keep things in the right sequence. I sometimes need to click that. And show percentage. Why not? That helps a little bit too. Let's save it. And I don't need it so big. Let's fit it in better. I also have been meaning to keep track of is people who are going back to the beginning and listening to the first episode going forward. I don't know why you do that. I think the show gets better with age. Start like, I don't know, 3 months back and worry about the archives later. But let's get a quick plot of something like that. And maybe let's only do that in the last 60 days. Now I'm going to set that to be a spark line. Really cool that that's included. I'm a big Edward Tufte fan, so I like to see a spark line in here. .45 is the average. Instead, I think I'd like the cumulative. So I can go into chart format and click show cumulative instead. Save that. And let's make this dashboard all look really nice. Spark lines can cramp pretty well into closed spaces. There we go. Off to a good start. Now what I'm really concerned with is the relative performance of the show. I'd like to know if it's improving episode to episode. Although it's great that we get big download numbers, those have been increasing with time, and I hope that continues. So rather than look at absolute numbers, I'd really like to normalize these against like the best day or the best episode. Now that's not how our data is stored. The table I've been querying lists the total number of downloads per episode per day. So that means my intro episode that we queried here has hundreds of records. Last Friday's episode has just 3 or 4 so far, but it's going to gain a new one every day. So as is often the case for a data scientist, the data, although it's clean in the sense that it's correct, it needs some work. It's not in exactly the right format I need. And I'm probably going to have to write a rather ugly query with a complex group by to get what I need. Now, rather than copying and pasting that a bunch of times and having these really unmaintainable copies of queries, I have this cool option called SQL views built right into Periscope Data. If you know about traditional SQL views, it's exactly what you're thinking, but a little bit fancier. Let's go and make one. To do that, I head on over to SQL views, and I'm going to add a view. So for starters, I'm going to need to know which episode got the maximum downloads. Okay, no errors. Now I want to just take the max of that Now I have to do just a little bit of SQL Kung Fu here because the data is not exactly the way it would ideally be. That's why it's great I have this view I can write once and use many times. So let's select the episode number. We'll grab the title as well. And the sum of the downloads divided by that norm as the normalized downloads. I want to do that from downloads, alias T1. And then I'm going to cross-join to this single number I've got here. By the way, I'm working in MySQL, so if you see any particular syntax things, I just so happen to have my data in MySQL, but I'm happy to report Periscope Data connects to just about every data source I could think of. Oops, little typo. And one other title. Alright, so episode number 0, introduction, 73, 81. Oh, 1.0, that means that, interestingly enough, our second episode is the most popular downloaded. Oh, I'll have to tell my good friend Nathan that. Now granted, that is the oldest interview I've ever done, and while it was a great guest, it's not necessarily my best interview. I hope I've improved over time, but nonetheless, it's been out there in the wild longer and had more time to accrue downloads, so that certainly accounts for something. But nonetheless, that's the data we've got here. Let me add in also the release date so we can do some filtering later on. Okay, there we go, release date, looking good. Now I could enter a description here. That's great for collaboration. I know a lot of teams use Periscope Data, and this would be a handy way for me to communicate those results to my collaborators. Oh, thought of one more feature that'd be good to add. If you listen to Data Skeptic, you're aware that we do mini episodes as well as longer interviews. So let's add a field for that. Case when title, like. I'm going to also add in a feature we have called ORD. It's the ordinal value of when it was released. So if I want to look at release dates, that's ORD 0. Day after release dates, that's ORD 1. This won't apply if we're breaking it down by day, nor will this sum. In fact, the whole group by can go away because this group by is a unique row. All right, let's run this one and double check our results. Okay, episode number 0, the introduction, first day, second day, ordinals, number of downloads is a mini. Okay, looking good. These are all zeros for two reasons, actually. One is because I launched the show before I put this live, so there are some zeros here, but also the precision, I think with only 4 decimals, the early downloads before anybody knew about the show are actually less than this precision, and that's okay. We're going to really, mostly in this video, look at more recent episodes. So let's call this episode day popularity. And let's save it. All right, now I've got those two handy views that'll be useful for some of the charts I want to create. Let's start with the, top 20 episodes by download. I actually don't know what they are, so let's find out. Okay, so let's remind ourselves about the SQL views we created. Episode popularity is the one I'm going to be interested in here. I want to know the top 20 most popular episodes. We can even see what columns there are. And in order to select from a view, you just put that view in brackets. That's the one special convention you need to know about Periscope data. Oh, great, IntelliSense kicks in. That's awesome. All right, since I spent all my time making the view a little bit complicated, my work now is very easy. Let's run that. Oh, I need an order by. And let's just look at the top 20. The third episode, or indexed by 2, since the intro starts as episode 0, my friend Nathan's episode, top downloaded 1. Second in line, machine learning done wrong. Oh, that was a good one too. Goodhart's Law, the library problem. Okay, I knew this one was really popular. Some surprises though. I did a video about Goodhart's Law. Maybe that's why this one picked up so much. Now I notice some of these are minis and some are not. So let's use that one flag I set up earlier. Where is mini? In this case, let's say it's 0. So we want only the interview and, oops. We want only the interview or special episodes. Cool. And then let's see, how should we look at that? Maybe as a bar plot? Well, that's not quite right, but I think we can fix it pretty quick. I can see that episode number, I really shouldn't have included that in my query, but since I did, let's just take that off as a series. There we go. Now we can see the relationship a little bit cleaner. Although it is kind of hard to read this way, so let's see what we can do with the chart. Oh, horizontal bars. Perfect. We'll call that normalized downloads. And let's show all the X labels. It's going to be ugly, but I'll stretch out the plot to make it work. In fact, let's keep it at 20. So normally that wouldn't be all that helpful for me, but here's what I can do seamlessly. Just drag and custom size it until I get down to being able to see exactly what I'm looking for. Now normally I might go in and, put some SQL in to trim these episode names. I'm actually just decided I'm going to look at only the top 10. Both are valid options, but seeing the trend, I now know that what I'm more interested in is just the top 10, because after that the tail runs pretty smoothly. Let's also copy this because I'm going to follow up with another chart specific for mini episodes. There we go, much nicer to read. Let's make the same chart for is mini. Okay, cool. And this will automatically update with time, of course, since all of these dashboards are dynamically regenerated. If they weren't regenerating fast enough, I could refresh the chart myself right now, but they're going to keep a small cache for me, which is great, so I don't have to hit my database constantly. I could download an image, grab the CSV, share a link. All right, cool. Now what if I really only wanted to look at more recent episodes? As I mentioned, it's a little unfair. Even though it was a great chat with Nathan, I was still figuring out my recording equipment and stuff like that. This is probably high because it's an older episode. Now I could do some Cox regression type stuff and study that, but instead, let's just see if I can filter this by year, and then maybe I could even look at each year individually. To do that, Periscope Data offers some filtering options that I think are really helpful. So let's go to our options for the entire dashboard and let's enable filters. That pops down this filter section. Now it gives me some defaults, aggregations, which probably in this case I don't need, but here's a cool one, date range. Let's do last, 90 days. Now, of course, as soon as I apply this, nothing's going to happen because I haven't put that date range into any queries yet. But it's available, so now I can. And I'll show you how that works first by editing this number of episodes. Now to use that filter, I say where, like I'm going to do a standard where clause. But again, it's a little bit Periscope specific, so I'm going to put a bracket in. And I'm going to say date equals date range, which is the name of that filter. Okay, should be that easy. Let's look. That hasn't changed. That's weird. Well, one nice thing we have available here is we can go look at the actual query that's being generated by Periscope Data in doing that. So while this is a little bit hairy, because they're ensuring that, that date range takes into account hours, all I have to write is one line of code, so that's nice, and they sort out the rest. Oh, I see the problem. So downloads, every date is the date of however many downloads happen that day. So as long as every episode has gotten at least one download in this date range, that's going to be good enough to come back in this result. So what I actually want here is where the downloads are in that range and the order, this is a column that tells us like 0 is the day of release, 1 would be the second day, 2 would be the third day. So I want to just look at first day downloads, and I think that should get me the result I'm looking for, which is just downloads so far in the last 90 days. 13. That sounds about right. Cool. I'm going to copy and paste this just so I have it handy. So now that we have those filters in place, I'd like to use them. I didn't yet make these charts support that, so let's go in and edit these. Alright, so I need to add in a new clause that takes advantage of that filter. Very similar to how we use brackets to add in the SQL view, we're going to add in a bracket to let Periscope Data know we're doing some of their special syntax. So let's say we want non-minis and we want, what did I call it? An episode popularity, release date, yeah. So I'm going to put a bracket and say release date equals date range. And let's run that. And now we see no longer the top 20 because it's early on in the year, but these are the top 6, well, the only 6 that have run so far this year of episodes and their popularity order. Let me copy that and let's do the same. Now it updates and I can see the order of interest in the mini episodes. From primer on deep learning, which got a lot of shares online, to our most recent episode on backpropagation, which I think will eventually catch up, but that's where it stands for now. Now here's one of my favorite things about these filters. Now that I've programmed them into those two charts, when I go and switch the date ranges, let's say 180 days. All right, Big Data Tools and Trends down to second place. Primer on Deep Learning still in first. Interesting, I want to keep an eye on this. I like that all the charts update when I change my filter. Now let's try out one of the more interesting or more complicated chart types they have, the Cohort Chart. Now what I'd really like to do is compare all of these episodes, release day to release day, second day to second day. Episode popularity by day this time. And let's just say the day is less than the first 20 days. Really, by then it's got most of its downloads. Okay, now let's map that. Oh, I almost forgot. Let's put our date range in. And date equals date range. Now, so technically that syntax can seem a little weird. This is a range. I could also have something in a list. The same syntax is equally valid, and Periscope Data will always convert that into the correct query. And what's cool is you can come down here and double check. Anyway, we've got the table. Let's switch that to the cohort grid. First thing I want to do is title it Episode Popularity Comparison by Date. Let's get to the bottom of what's going on with election predictions. A lot of empties and then, oh, I see why. So this is an older episode whose tail end lasts, 4 days of its life, if you will, cross over into our date range. I'd prefer to just hide that when the date range is set. I want things that have a start inside the range. So I don't have an episode release date in this plot formally. That's okay. Let's call that T1 and let's join it to select. I guess we can join on title. Oh good, I'm glad we're doing this. This shows a little bit more of the syntax. I thought this was tricky the first time I did it, but once I saw it, it seemed really easy. If I want to refer to a specific alias, I can just say T2.release date equals the date range, and everything works out perfectly. Actually, yeah, I think for views, I have to do one little step. That way I can alias them, no problem. Okay, cool. So now I have only episodes that were released in that date range compared. And let's look across. Notice the coloring. The larger magnitude numbers are given larger values. This one falls off because that's a newer episode. Oh, this one falls off. I actually deleted that episode. It was a temporal announcement, so I put it up for a little while. That's why it goes to 0 after the 4th day I deleted it. But I'm kind of seeing now with this cohort plot in one quick visualization. In fact, let's save this and resize it. I really like this one. Oh, maybe it'd be nice if that was a little bit less space. Maybe I should go back and cut some of the length. We'll do that in a minute, but first I just want to drag this out. All right, I can start to see a little bit about the decay rate of some episodes, how they compare. The longer an episode stays blue, the longer it held popularity. Really interesting. And we see some nice trends, like we've noticed a couple times the library problem was a very well downloaded episode. Not so much on its first day, but it's had a lot of accolades and it extends pretty long into the future. Very interesting. I've got a lot more to study on this. What if I wanted to look at just mini episodes alone? Let's do a custom filter. We just add a filter. Let's call it isMini. I get to specify where you find the values from. This is cool. So this is dynamic. I'll just say select. It's just isMini from episode popularity. And actually, I don't know if we have to say distinct mini or not. It might do it for us, but let's just do it. 0 and 1. But, I could have something else where I wanted to select by, I don't know who the sponsor was or something like that, and I could get a list of checkboxes. So let's look at only the mini episodes. Now, remember, this filter's not yet applied anywhere. So nobody's going to update, or no one's actually going to change during the update. But let's go and edit this chart. Let's add another filter, and t1.isMini equals the value of the filter called isMini. And that's because I called it that when I created it. Cool. Let's save that. Now I can see all the mini episodes and how their popularity declines or extends through time. There's the most recent episode, so it's not yet filled out there. All right, that's interesting. Let's switch from mini to interview and feature episodes and see how this works. All right, a little bit more consistency maybe, but 2 episodes. Well, there's a little data quality bug I need to address separately in this video. I usually push episodes live the day they go live, or maybe I'll set them up just a few hours or the night before. Sometimes, if we're going to be out of town or something, I'll queue up an episode to launch in advance. When I do that, like I did this one 5 days in advance, unfortunately our analytics start counting it early. So I need to really clean up the data to fix that issue, but Periscope's doing exactly what the database says to do. So cool, I like this. This is a great way for me to see the longevity of episodes, and in this case that, at least for the interviews and stuff, pretty consistent. The minis, we saw some variety. All right, let's make another chart, and I want to try and understand a little bit more about like the 30, 60, 90 days. Where do downloads go through all those times? So I should be able to do that with relative ease. Let's select the title of the episode from the downloads table. Let's group by the title. And what I want to do, let's get the 60 to 90 first. So I'm going to do a case statement. When the ordinal value, that's how many days something's been live, is greater than 60 and less than or equal to 90, then we'll return the number of downloads, the norm downloads. Otherwise, we'll return a 0. And we'll call that as D90. Let me copy that template a few times. First, if it's greater than 0, less than or equal to 30, 30 to 60. We'll call that D60, D30. Let's just look at things from this year. Let's just do this kind of quick and dirty. We'll say, and title in It's a little bit sloppy from a SQL perspective, but the database is small, so we don't have to worry too much about the indexing issues. I'd prefer 30 be on the bottom, though, so why don't I rearrange this a bit. Let's put 30 down here, 60 in the middle, so it looks like it's kind of climbing, if you will. Oh, turns out, I guess, most downloads come in the first 30 days. Makes sense, so let's cut this down, and let's do it 10, 20, 30. Oh, you know what? Why don't we look at last year so that everyone's had a chance to go 90 days? Okay. Oh, that's interesting. I think that's actually showing the growth of the show's audience a little bit there. Let's tweak this though. I'm not totally satisfied with what I'm seeing. For the legend, I don't need that. Let's give all the space to the actual data. Let's just save it and we'll space it out in the main dashboard. This can go a little wider. First 10 days, wow, really dominate the downloads. And it looks like as the audience size has grown, I'm seeing newer episodes over here, older episodes here, that the growth really happens and shows itself in the first 10 days. 10 to 20, 20 to 30 are modest contributions. Now, some of that, of course, relates to the fact that as soon as I release a new episode, that's usually the one that gets downloaded first, so every 7 days I'm almost penalizing these, but interesting nonetheless to see. Now, with that in mind, I always worry that, what if something's gone wrong with my site or I got de-indexed or who knows what? I'd really like to have a level of comfort where that was kind of being watched for me. I don't want to have to check the stats every day. There's another cool feature in Periscope Data I can use for that. That's SQL alerts. So let's say I'm worried about my downloads and I expect them to never be less than some number per day. So let's get yesterday's downloads. Let's do something like select. And actually, let's just capture the last 2 or 3 just to be safe. Any date in the last 3 days. Let's sum the downloads. And I don't want this to be any less than 5,000, let's say. Well, I can run it every hour. That's not totally necessary. I'll run it every 12 hours because the stats only update once per day. Check the site and hosting. And that's enabled. Let's save it. So now, if I ever have a day where I get less than 5,000 downloads, I'm going to get an email about it. That's really cool. Now, like I said, my downloads only update once per day. I think this would be incredibly more useful if I was saying, like, on an e-commerce site, show me if any single department hasn't had a sale in the last 90 minutes or something like that. All right, there's a lot of tinkering I can do. I really have fun in here, so I could go all day making different plots and exploring different aspects of the business, different aspects of my numbers. But for now, let's wrap this up. It's getting a little long, and let's make this a shared dashboard. So I'm not going to come here every day. I don't have time for that. I want to get an email with this content every day. So I'd like to see this in my inbox. Let's go to Dashboard Preferences, Email Reports, schedule this daily for, let's do 8 p.m. Send it to me. Oh, let's also send it to Linda. Let's just send a test to make sure that works. All right, I've got my email off screen for privacy reasons, but I just got that, so let's pull it in and take a look at it. There we go, my exact dashboard, all embedded in an email. Now, what's great about that is this is static. If I want to go see the interactive stuff, I can log into my Periscope Data dashboard, but now I have a record. So in the future, if I want to just type in, the name of this dashboard, I get all these snapshots that go back in time. So I think that's an added bonus for having email as kind of a backup or a way to look backwards on data that doesn't have full provenance. One last cool feature before I let you guys go. So my main communication for people I collaborate with is Slack. Let's pull over the Data Skeptic Slack channel, in fact. Now I'd love to share this dashboard with my colleague Christine. Christine's been helping out a lot at Data Skeptic for a while now. I hope you guys have seen some of her blog posts. Cool. All right. We can open that, get all the zooming available in Slack, all the standard stuff you come to expect. What's great about that is I just did one click, copy and paste the URL here. As simple as that is, what would I have done if I didn't have this Slack integration? Well, Data Skeptic Slack is private, as is our Periscope dashboard. If you just grab this link and put it in your browser, it's not going to work because I haven't made you a member of my team. So I'd have to screenshot that, move the file somewhere, paste it. There are just a lot of steps, and that many steps kind of slow me down. This method of really easily sharing data can allow me to have a conversation with someone and then answer them with a query. Since I find writing SQL and getting quick visualizations is done by me mostly at my go-to place in Periscope Data, I can now copy those over really easy into Slack, my go-to place for communication. So I thought that's a really cool plugin they added relatively recently that we've been making good use of. I hope you guys had fun with that. That's a brief overview of just some of the basics that I've been enjoying working with Periscope Data. There's a whole lot more out there to work on. I didn't even get to talk about caching or show fancier plots than this or really do much customization with multiple axes. All that stuff comes together really easily, and I kind of enjoy making dashboards. If you think Periscope Data might suit your organization's needs, head on over to periscopedata.com/skeptics so that they know we sent you. Thanks so much for watching.